Okay, in this video, I'm going to discuss with you the solutions on the questions you have tried earlier on. So, the first question asks, is this man correct? He says that the angle of incidence is 30 degrees. Is he correct? Okay, the answer is no. Why is he incorrect? So recall that what is the angle of incidence? Angle of incidence is the angle formed between the normal and the incident ray. So since cannot see, okay, so since angle of incidence is the angle formed between the normal and the incident ray, we have to first identify where the normal is and recall that a normal is perpendicular to the plane mirror, which means to say it is at right angle or 90 degrees to the plane mirror. So how do you draw the normal? You will need your protractor, and with the protractor, what you will do is you will adjust as okay, very good. So after you adjust it properly, you make sure that the line of the plane mirror is aligned to the bottom of the protractor, and mark the 90 degrees so that you know that it is at right angle to the plane mirror. So then how do you draw the line of normal? You have to use dotted line to represent it. So you notice that the examples given in your own notes are also in dotted lines. Okay, and what should you do? You will then label this as normal. Okay, so having said this is normal. And where is the incident ray? The incident ray is here. So take note, the angle should be formed between the normal and the incident ray, which is here. So this angle here, which I've shaded for you, is the angle of incidence. So it is not 30 degrees like what the man say. Instead, it is, okay, let's just find the measurement. Okay, it is about 30 degrees, close to 31 to be exact. This angle here is actually 31 degrees if you were to measure very carefully. So how do I find this angle here? This angle here will then be 90 because of right angle minus your 30 degrees. Actually, is to be exact, it's actually 31, but it's okay, which is 60 degrees. Okay, so what should your answer be? No. Then you will say the angle of incidence is 60 degrees. Okay, so if you have to pause the video, please go ahead and pause the video. I'll just carry on teaching. Okay, the next question requires you to sketch. When they say sketch, reminder, it need not be exact. Okay, it need not be exact, but you have to try to make it look like it is close to the actual one. Okay, so write down the angle of incidence and the angle of reflection. So for question 2a, it is very obvious. So this is the angle of incidence. So the angle of incidence is 15 degrees. And the angle of reflection is always the same as angle of incidence, right? Where I equals to R. So this will also be 15 degrees. And how do you sketch? Same thing, you use a pencil. For me, my personal preference is, although they ask to sketch, I will also use a protractor to measure. That's a good habit, okay? So, okay, even though this says 15, but it is not 15, but it's okay. So I'll just measure roughly, this is about 18. So I will also measure 18 from here. Okay. And okay. And please take note, I have to draw the direction of the light ray with the arrow. And what else am I supposed to do? I have to label. What am I supposed to label? So I'll label this as the incident ray and the other as the reflected ray. Okay? Okay, so now let's move on to the next part. The next part, okay, again, this is a right angle, meaning to say it is 90 degrees. So how do I find the angle of incidence? It will be 90 minus 30, and I should get 60 degrees. So if this angle here is 60 degrees, this is actually the angle of incidence, which means the angle of reflection is also 60 degrees. Again, the question asks you to sketch, right? So you don't have to be exact, but a good habit would be to use a protractor and try to measure accurately. Okay, so although it says here 30 degrees, actually it is not. It is just 20, but never mind. I'll just draw something that looks the same. Okay, the point of sketching is that it should look about the same, or it must look like they are a reflection of each other. So yeah, and then label. This will, oh, okay, so I noticed that this is actually bouncing out, which means this is actually the reflected ray. If this is the reflected ray, the incident ray will then be this. This is the incident ray. Okay, and please take note, the angle of incidence and angle of reflection is equal, so it doesn't matter. If this is 60, the other will be 60 as well. Okay, now let's try the next question. Okay, in the next question, now the image looks like this. This is again a normal. So what is this? This will then be 90 minus 35, and you get 55, right? Yes. Okay, 55 degrees is the angle of incidence. Okay, again, it's a sketch, so you don't have to be accurate, but my personal preference is to make it look so close, look very close to the actual by using a protractor. Okay, so if this here is 35, I will also have 35 here. Okay, and then I will draw my line. Okay, again the direction. So since this is the ray that hits the plane mirror, this will be the incident ray, and this will hence be the reflected ray. Since it's the reflected ray, draw the direction of the arrow. Okay. Next, question 3. Now question 3, the question is phrased slightly differently. It used the word draw. So it means that you must be very exact. You have to use a protractor. Okay? If you don't use a protractor, when your teacher mark your work, it will not be considered correct. So what are you supposed to do for this question? You are supposed to label and write down the angle. And not just that, you have to show your normal and use your protractor to measure the angles accurately. So how do I go about doing that? So firstly, how do you draw the normal? You will again need your protractor. Okay, place it on the plane mirror like this. Okay, and make sure that it is you mark out 90 degrees. This is where it is perpendicular or at 90 degrees with the plane mirror. So after you mark out, please take note, you have to join it with dotted line. Okay, your normal must be drawn in dotted line. It shouldn't be drawn using a solid line. Okay, and since this is this ray is pointing towards the plane mirror, you know that this must be the incident ray. If this is the incident ray, then where is the angle of incidence? The angle of incidence will then be here. How do I measure the angle of incidence? I leave it to you. If you want to do some subtraction, by all means, go ahead. If you want to turn your paper so that you don't have to do any calculation, you can as well. Okay, so after measuring, I see that it is 30 degrees. So angle of incidence is hence 30 degrees. Angle of reflection is equal to angle of incidence, so this is also 30 degrees. And how do I draw 30? So again, I put my protractor this way. Okay, what's next? You have to mark out 30. How do you see 30? So it's like 10, 20, 30, right? So at this point here is where 30 degrees is at. Then what do? You join to where the incident ray hits the plane mirror. Okay, and not to forget your arrow. Okay, once you do this, please remember the question asks you to label the reflected ray. Question? Okay, no. This is the next part. Okay, so again, the first thing you should do is you should identify the normal. How to identify the normal? Again, I prefer to turn the paper until I am comfortable. Okay, and make sure I mark out the 90 degrees to show that it is at right angle or at 90 degrees with the plane mirror. Again, a reminder, the normal must be drawn using dotted lines. Okay, so I have a dotted line now. This is my normal, and since this ray is going towards the plane mirror, this is actually my incident ray. So if this is my incident ray, where is the angle of incidence? This is my angle of incidence. Okay, how do you measure? I leave it to your personal preference. I like to do this. Okay, after measuring, my angle of incidence is actually 50 degrees. So I'll write down here 50 degrees. Okay, so if this is 50 degrees, it means to say my angle of reflection is also 50 degrees, right? So you can also turn the paper and measure out 50. Okay, so if this is 50, then what do? Joint it to where it touches the plane mirror with a solid line. And please remember, it should bounce off the mirror so it becomes like this. Okay, and label this is your reflected ray. Since your reflected ray is here, it means the angle of reflection is actually here, and angle of reflection is the same as angle of incidence, which means this is also 50 degrees. If you have question, you can private message me, okay, then I can probably answer your questions personally. Okay.